If you're gearing up for your first ever season bow hunting for turkey, this video is for you. I'm going to share with you the 7 lessons that I learned from my very first season bow hunting for turkeys that I wish I would have heard before entering into the woods. Let's get into it. As a quick intro, I'm Tim. I'm brand new to bow hunting. I picked up my first bow. It was a hand-me-down bow less than 2 years ago. And since I got that bow, I've been absolutely obsessed, borderline of OCD. And I wasn't raised up hunting in the outdoors, and I've never had a mentor to guide me. So I've been researching, reading, listening to podcasts, watching YouTube videos, all to just understand. But of course, nothing prepares you as much as being out in the field and seeing animals in action. So this video is for anyone starting from scratch. People like myself that didn't grow up in camo, who might feel overwhelmed or just figuring things out solo. So there are some great veterans out there, obviously, with decades and decades of experience, but sometimes you just need someone who's lived through being a beginner. Because if you have 30 years of experience, you're probably forgetting what it's like, the small nuances going into the woods, not understanding things, and then learning for the first time. So if this is your first year bow hunting, whether it's for turkeys or even whitetails, this video is for you, and I hope it helps bridge the gap. Lesson number 1, hunt where the animals are. I know this sounds incredibly obvious, but this is something that it took me really 2 seasons of chasing whitetails to internalize. And it showed up really big for me during this turkey season because on all 7 days of hunting that I did this year, I saw birds. And not just a few birds, but tons of birds. So if you're not seeing sign, hearing birds, or getting some kind of feedback from the landscape that they are there, you're wasting your time and it's likely dead ground. In less than 2 years of bow hunting, I've harvested 5 whitetails with a bow. And every single one of them came from me realizing that they were there during this time. Just like deer, turkeys have movement patterns. They're not always going to be in that one field. So once you see them there, once you've identified the sign, whether you're seeing them, you're hearing them, then that's the place that you should hunt. Biggest thing that I learned was I learned to stop hoping and start observing. Tracks, feathers, roost trees, travel patterns. Don't force a sit. Hunt where they are, not where you want them to be. Lesson number 2, they don't always come into decoys. Because I was bow hunting, I felt like I needed a blind to conceal my movement. And I still feel that to some extent, but I figured you also need a decoy for the birds to come in within close enough range for you to get a shot while they're still being still. So I set up full strut, Jake hen, solo Jake, and a lot of the time when they were in big flocks, they had their own social dynamic and they weren't even coming into the decoy. So I was really rigid in this process where I was like, they need to come in the decoy, I need to call them in. But the biggest takeaway that I felt is that they're not always going to come into a decoy. Some days they're in different moods. Some days they're in too big of groups. They already have their hens. So relying on that sole function isn't a great strategy. It's a reminder that context matters. Just because it worked for somebody else on YouTube, it doesn't mean that it's going to work for you in your specific setup. So be ready to adapt, whether that's getting out of the blind, keeping a blind without decoy, not calling them in, working their actual patterns. Sometimes decoys can even hurt you and the birds start to avoid it. I was able to see that 2 or 3 times. And every bird has, and every group of birds has a different mood. On one day they're going to love it, and on the next day they want nothing to do with it. So the key is to stay flexible, read the birds, not just the forms. Lesson number 3, stay later than you expect. Yes, getting up early matters. Getting in before the birds come down from the roost absolutely matters. You're going to have your best time identifying where the birds are. That said, don't leave after the first few hours. Some of the most promising movements that we saw were in the middle of the day, specifically when the groups of toms and hens separated, and there was solo birds out there. They were definitely more likely to come in towards the decoys during that time and be more curious. Turkeys would often break out from a group and shift towards the woods during the middays or show up when we least expected it. Out of the 7 days that I hunted for turkey this spring, birds showed up at all times of the day. You might need to switch some strategies, maybe going from field to the edge in the morning or creeping into the timber midday. But the point is, like, don't just pack up early. If you're gonna harvest a bird, you're gonna be successful, you're gonna need to hunt hard, and that requires time spent in the woods. Lesson number 4, always have a plan B and C. One of the mornings I set up on this field edge, I had seen birds in this field the night before. There was tons of sign. I was very confident that they were going to show up in that field. Anyways, they did show up, but they showed up on literally the very opposite kitty corner end of the field. I waited, I called them in, but nothing ever happened. They stayed on a field edge, kind of bordering this river bottom. However, that next afternoon, I ended up scouting that river bottom and realized that there was way enough cover for me to actually get out of my blind and sneak down there and pop up on that field edge. However, since I didn't have that plan, I stayed in the blind and ended up not getting any opportunity. So realizing that you need to think like a predator, you need to be mobile, you need to have plan B, plan C, plan D, if the first plans aren't working, available to you is incredibly important. Lesson number 5, turkeys are extremely paranoid and movement is everything. Turkeys are insanely sharp. Their eyes are evolved for one thing, and that's not dying. And if you're even slightly moving, even if they haven't completely identified you as a predator, they're gone, or at least moving too quick for you to get a shot off. A few times I got within 10 and 20 yards while run and gunning through the woods, which, is bow range, but even then, the shot didn't happen. And why didn't that happen? Because they never stopped moving. And when you're that close, every sound matters. The crack of a bow limb, it's gonna make a move. So you need to realize that the best camo on the market is being still. Real camouflage is about using the shadows, staying perfectly still, and basically becoming invisible to the bird's eye. Think the eye of Sauron. If you move, they'll see you. If you flinch, they'll vanish. Be patient, be still, and don't force the shot. Lesson number 6, practice is everything, but it's not enough. I shoot my bow constantly. It's part of my daily routine. It's one of the few aspects of hunting that I feel like I have some control of, because I can control how often and how frequently I'm shooting, and also how confident I feel at a target. That said, I'm doing everything from shooting 3D courses to shooting seated, shooting from my blind, shooting with the exact setup to mimic what it's like to harvest a turkey. However, the gold zone for a turkey, in my opinion, is probably 10 to 15 yards, which means your setup, whether you're in a blind, in from a field edge, has to reflect that. The first 2 times that I'd set up a decoy, I set it up at 20 yards because I was like, wow, I could shoot a bird at 20 yards. But if the turkey gets held up, even 5 yards or 10 yards from that decoy, and now you're considering a 30, 35 yard shot, it's pretty far when the kill zone of a turkey is so small, and also the amount of movement and reaction that they have to any other type of movement that you're having. So make sure that your practice and preparation reflects what you're going to see in the field, and your setup reflects how close that you actually need to be to harvest a turkey. And the final lesson number 7, bow hunting for turkeys is just hard, plain and simple. This was one of the hardest things that I've done outdoors, and it's not because of the physical demand that it took. It was because of all of the other lessons that I alluded to. I hunted 7 days in total out of the season. I saw tons of birds. I saw birds on every single day that I hunted. I was within 40 yards at least 15 or 20 times. I had some great setups. I drew back my bow to full draw and anchor 8 different times, but I didn't let a single arrow fly. There was always something. The angle wasn't right, the brush was too thick, the bird was walking, it was just moving, and the moment ended up passing. It's frustrating, but it's also like why we do this. If it were easy, it wouldn't mean much of anything. Bow hunting for turkeys forces you to level up every single part of your game. Your patience, your shooting, your ability to stay composed. If you want to be a successful turkey hunter with a bow, you're going to earn it. All right, everyone, that wraps up the 7 lessons that I learned this season in the 2025 season. If you're just getting into bow hunting for turkeys, hopefully this helped you and you can avoid some of the growing pains. I'm still figuring out myself, and I'm going to keep documenting what I learned. Let me know in the comment section what lessons hit home for you and what you wish you would have heard going into maybe your first season if you're new like myself. Subscribe if you want to follow along the journey from rookie mistakes to hopefully my first bird with a bow. Thanks for watching. Now get out, hunt hard, and remember, practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes you.